The evil machines have finally met their match when confronted with the deadliest of new weapons. No, not the dryer lint! Ah, not the cute cuddly lizard puppet! Oh, the humanity! Oh wait, who's that guy? Probably not important, but I guess we'll find out in the 14th episode of Zeo. Yeah, I know why you're all here. You know that I know why you're all here. It was in the teaser, I'm sure I put it in the thumbnail, probably in the title. Song Sung Yellow versus the Storm-Calling Kendama is not why you're here. Please don't leave. If you're new, you should know that I usually do 2 sets of episode comparisons per video, and I can't fit both of them into the thumbnail. This is not a bait and switch. Think of it as a warm-up act. We'll get to the cool stuff soon, I promise. But while Song Sung Yellow is the next Power Rangers Zeo episode after Bulk Fiction, which we covered last time, the Storm-Calling Kendama is actually an earlier Ohranger episode I had to skip over before because it was not adapted into the Tommy's long-lost brother Arrowhead storyline like the rest of the surrounding episodes were. And that made me sad because I had really been looking forward to this episode. So much so that I forgot to come back to it last time. Wait, no, I actually didn't forget. I had to hold off until Bulk and Skull joined the detective agency. Ugh, there are so many things I have to keep track of. But this episode is really fun. Let me set the stage for you. Okay, so this is back during the period when Ohranger Robo is still old and busted. Red Puncher is the new hotness. Yuji wants his own new hotness and so manages to get his hands on his own new robot. Made entirely of wood. I love this premise. I love this premise so much. Even before the premise gets going, this is amazing. I already raved about the show's hilarious gags concerning Ohranger Robo's rehabilitation, and I hinted that as fun as the basketball game is, we had to skip over the best one. Well, now we're back. It's Judy and Momo leading both robots in aerobics. Goro pilots Red Puncher while Shohei and Yuji pilot Ohranger Robo. The badass giant robots of my childhood behaving so whimsically is something I never thought I would see, and it makes me so happy. Goro even tries the workouts himself, insisting they're easier to do as Red Puncher, edging ever closer to giving these characters personalities. And this is not just funny, it's a setup for the premise. In fact, it's a little too perfect. The instant that Shohei and Yuji get jealous of Goro having a robot he can pilot by himself, who shows up but their little buddy Mikio, who has brought a friend from a country town to inform them of this new robot that one of them can pilot by themselves. How convenient! Umeno is a lumber town, so all of its products follow a certain theme.
Is it about wood?
Yes, wood. In fact, they're particularly proud of their Kendama toys. Kendama is a Japanese ball and cup game. The ball is attached to the handle by a string, and the user attempts to catch the ball in the various sized cups, or to spike the ball's hole on the tiny stick on top. Why am I telling you this? The show includes lots of examples of Kendama tricks that you can see for yourself. Because of this, the new robot is not only made of wood, but it's actually called Kendama Robo. A robot equipped with his own giant kendama that must be mastered to be used. Now, does anybody ever ask whether this robot has any offensive capabilities that might actually be useful? No, this is not that kind of episode. The only thing that matters is getting the ball in the cup. And Yuji can't, much to his shame and to the shock of the onlookers. The inventor even asks Mikio if he's sure this guy is an Ohranger, because he can't put the ball in the cup. But Yuji works hard to master Kendama, and is soon wowing everyone with his Kendama Robo piloting abilities. Unfortunately for him, Hysterier has swapped out Kendama Robo with the identical but far more evil Bara Kendama, which imprisons Yuji in the pilot seat and runs amok. The other Ohrangers have to save his scrawny butt. Now, we've long established that anytime Ohranger does something fun, Power Rangers has to scrub every trace of it away. Does this episode have anything to do with Kendama? Nope. Does it have anything to do with swapping out a good robot for a bad robot? Nope. Does it even have anything to do with Yuji's Blue Ranger counterpart Rocky? Nope. And that's really weird, not only because it forces them to struggle against the footage they're adapting, but because Power Rangers likes to write episode titles that are parodies of pop culture. This episode is called Song Sung Yellow, so this is obviously about the Yellow Ranger. Song Sung Yellow is a reference to a Neil Diamond song. Do you know what the name of that song actually is? Song Sung Blue! It was already right there! You're just trolling me at this point. This is an episode about Tanya singing. It opens with a very long music video that I'm sure wowed the target audience. All I could think about was how annoyed I was at the squashed aspect ratio because they clearly didn't decide they wanted to letterbox it until after they had shot it.
Adam, I'm impressed. Someday you're gonna make a great director.
No, he's not! Well, Tanya's new random character trait is just perfect for Ernie's After Hours Club, where she is scouted by a record producer. However, Bulk and Skull, now hard-working detectives, are convinced the producer is a fraud, and make it a point to expose him. He's not, and it doesn't really go anywhere, but their antics eat up a few minutes. That's not to say Power Rangers doesn't do its own fun stuff. The wacky detective stone tracking gizmos that Bulk and Skull set up are funny. What's really great though is Tommy's eagle-eyed freeze frame of the music video. Oh crackers, how did none of us notice this incredibly subtle detail? You would think this would mean that the Machine Empire sabotaged Tanya's video in some way, but no. It's just there to establish that the Power Rangers are comically unobservant to the point that Cogs could give them a wet willy without any of them noticing. I was laughing out loud at this. The point actually is that they're stealing stuff for Prince Sprocket's birthday party. And what did his parents get him? It's Kendama Robo! Or Bara Kendama, they're folded into one character, Wrecking Ball, because we have to pretend that Kendama isn't baked into his design. But I have to give them credit. The footage of Yuji failing to properly Kendama fits pretty well with young Sprocket struggling to learn how to use his new toy. The remote control conceit is fine, but I wish they'd gone the full mile and built their own cockpit set for their Sprocket to get tortured in. Would have been much funnier. My only problem with this setup might be more obvious to you if you watched the last Zeo. Sprocket is given his own monster, framed as a new toy that he's supposed to use to defeat the Power Rangers. That's the plot of Bulk Fiction, the previous episode of Power Rangers Zeo. It literally aired the day before this one. This Bulk and Skull story is a direct follow-up to them quitting the police force in that episode. I can't believe they immediately recycled the same plot. But hey, at least the Power Rangers get into a pie fight. That's pretty funny. At this point, both episodes make it to the fight, the wrap-up, and the very important lesson. With Yuji, the stakes are that he needs to be rescued, and Bara Kendama needs to be stopped. Goro breaks out Red Puncher for the punchy stuff, but he just can't do it alone. Fortunately, the others find the real Kendama Robo. Shohei pilots it to give Goro a hand, and hey, doesn't this make for a great Yuji episode when Shohei can effortlessly pilot the robot that Yuji struggled a whole episode to master? While they have Bara Kendama pinned down, the girls rescue Yuji from the cockpit. It's quite a robust giant robot fight, and unlike a lot of Ohranger, it feels necessary rather than obligatory. So, what's the lesson? Well, Yuji apologizes for causing all this trouble, but he didn't? He didn't build Kendama Robo, he didn't ask to pilot it, he didn't swap it out for an evil fake. He doesn't do anything wrong, he's just the victim of a scheme. So instead they settle on the lesson of the value of working with others. And that kinda fits. The other four definitely work together. It's just a shame that Yuji has nothing to do with this victory. His hard-fought Kendama skills don't contribute anything after he's rescued. And this doesn't feel like a lesson Yuji needed to learn. See, I actually confused this with a later Power Rangers Zeo episode. I thought this was adapted into the one where Rocky gets jealous of the return of a certain other gold-colored character and runs off on his own to prove himself. And I kinda conflated that with this. I mean, visually, the idea that Yuji feels he needs to prove himself fits. The girls are teaching aerobics, Gordo is piloting his robot, and Shohei is piloting his robot, while Yuji's hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride. But the episode doesn't play to that nearly as much as I remembered. The idea isn't that Yuji doesn't have anything to do. The idea, as captured in this freeze frame, is that while Red Puncher can be piloted solo, it's much harder to control Ohranger Robo. Both Shohei and Yuji are lamenting this and are coveting Red Puncher. The giant woodman just happens to go to Yuji, but it never comes across as though Yuji in particular is feeling down about his role on the team. I just remember this as being more thematically cohesive than it actually is. But that's still far more thematically cohesive than Song Sung Yellow. The conflict here, such as it is well-worn territory.
This guy's card says he's from Hollywood. Does that mean you'll have to move there?
Yes, like Peace Summits, Pan-Global Games, and Sick Animals of Days Gone By, the question is whether Tanya is going to abandon the Power Rangers like Jason, Trini, Zach, Kimberly, and Aisha before her. No, this isn't that kind of episode. Tanya's not a half-miler like those losers. She'll happily give up her dreams because Nakia Baris still wants to be on the show. I mean, because the Power Rangers need Tanya, as demonstrated by Tommy single-handedly defeating the Wrecking Ball monster without anybody else's help. Yeah, because all the Japanese plot is cut out of this, there is very little shared footage between these episodes. The Ohranger fights are missing OhBlue, but the Power Rangers fights are missing Zeo Ranger 2 Yellow, so they have to film all new stuff. And for the robot fight, they can't use any of the elements that include teamwork or that feature the extra robot. It's cut down so much, the Red Battlezord doesn't even struggle. It just comes in and kicks butt. It's 2 minutes of easy fighting, so it never seems like Tanya is needed. They just don't have the footage for it. And it's weird because they have the setup for the team needing Tanya, but not the payoff. The Power Rangers get paged right as Tanya is performing her song, and they have to leave without her. When I saw this moment of Tommy miming to Tanya that they have to leave, it immediately reminded me of episode 23 of the live-action Sailor Moon series where Usagi convinces Rei to keep singing rather than go with her to fight a monster. But in that show, the moment is used to teach Rei that she needs to learn to rely on other people and trust them to get the job done, rather than try to do everything herself. Whereas here, it exists for no reason at all except to needlessly guilt-trip Tanya, I guess. But it's not like I need to tell you that PGSM is better than Power Rangers Zeo. It's the best show that's ever been made. Also, I need to update the sign. So it turns out that Song Sung Yellow and the Storm-Calling Kendama do have one thing in common. They both feature a character who is unable to participate in the final battle, and whose absence does not matter in the slightest. Let's score these. For story, while I don't think Ohranger carries its concept to full fruition, it still succeeds overall in crafting a cohesive narrative that never even thinks about taking itself seriously. Ohranger wins. For characters, while I think Tanya's singing carries forward into future episodes, it does seem to come out of nowhere here. But I'm really impressed with Ohranger. Even though I think it could have tied it better to Yuji feeling the need to accomplish something, this seems like a situation tailor-made for him. I buy him as the little brother character who would become obsessed with Kendama and piloting his own robot. Ohranger wins. And for action, while Power Rangers contributes a good pie fight as far as its original material goes, it wrecks the robot fight. The original includes all kinds of twists and turns that Power Rangers has to discard because they're not writing their stories around the footage. Ohranger wins! It's a clean sweep, but I love this episode, so I'm not the least bit surprised. Okay, it took until page 4 of my script, but finally, this is what you came for, I presume. Zyuranger introduced the concept of a separate sixth hero in its 17th episode. For some reason, Ohranger waits until episode 26 to do the same thing. And while the show has been winning me over with its pivot to wacky kendama humor, it still very much needs a shot in the arm. Can this be what does it? Unfortunately, this comparison is complicated by serialization. As you saw with the title, this is a two-parter that Power Rangers cuts down to a single episode. That's not quite the whole story though. Ohranger isn't a two-parter. It's technically a three-parter, but it also isn't. It's actually two stories spread across 3 episodes, and I'm already annoyed just talking about it. The introduction of Riki, the King Ranger, happens in the first episode. He doesn't actually transform until the second episode. He and the Ohrangers defeat the monster halfway through, then it immediately pivots into a new plot where Riki is kidnapped and impersonated, which takes another episode and a half to complete. Power Rangers doesn't even bother adapting the second story and cuts the first story down just enough to fit in a single episode, and this time, I can't even blame them. Why did Ohranger have to make this so complicated? Well, we already saw Power Rangers pull this same crap with the No Business Like Snow Business 3-parter, so I guess Ohranger deserves to get a little wild too. So, for the sake of my sanity, I'm just going to compare the power of gold to the 600 million year old boy warrior and the first half of King's Gallant debut. All things considered, for what it's able to use, this Power Rangers episode adapts the Ohranger footage fairly faithfully. That is to say, it uses the footage of the new hero being a badass, and all it really does is add some more effects to the hand-drawn speedy blur used in the original. But both shows are about chasing down what turns out to be a new addition. Even the American footage shares the same goal of our leads, trying to figure out what's going on. That's more than I can say for our last match. Beyond that though, the shows have very different goals. For Power Rangers, it's all about the mystery. The Ohrangers know who Riki is and what he's about before they ever learn he can transform like them. That he can transform into the King Ranger is the big reveal. Power Rangers goes the opposite direction with their Gold Ranger. And yeah, he's really a Black Ranger, not a Gold Ranger, but he wears a gold shield, just like the original Green Ranger, but they still called him the Green Ranger. Okay, whatever, it's meant to be totally cool. The Power Rangers know the form of what is later called the Gold Ranger, but they'll make it out the other side of this episode and several subsequent episodes not knowing who he is. They just know he's some super cool guy who saves their butts and can summon a big pyramid to kill things. The only thing we learn about him is that he was apparently the guy in all those old Budweiser commercials. The show clearly wants the audience to start guessing the identity of the Gold Ranger, and in this episode, they want you to think it's Billy, because he suddenly regrets no longer being a Power Ranger.
This is an energy signature from your Zeo crystals.
There are only 5 of us.
There used to be 6.
And he mysteriously disappears whenever the Gold Ranger shows up. Could it be? I guess you'll have to stay tuned to find out. It's definitely a good way to build interest in this new development.
What's going to happen next?
Over in Ohranger, Miura already has all the details ready the second a mysterious pyramid crosses over into their dimension. He explains all about Riki, the boy warrior who fought against the uprising machine servants on Earth 600 million years ago, and who was sent to a timeless dimension in case those machines ever came back. He shares information about the Dorin, an innocent race of humanoids who could communicate with the gods and with animals, who were almost entirely wiped out in that previous war, and whose remaining representative was put into stasis with Riki, whose job it is to protect her. He doesn't explain Paku, the cute but totally unconvincing lizard puppet they travel around with, but he's there too. Maybe one day he'll be noticed in the history books. And Bakashoon soon reveals that he is the evil machine Riki once fought against, who in defeat fled Earth and, literally, built the Baranoia Empire, including his wife and son. Like with Barai's backstory in Zyuranger, this doesn't entirely make sense to me, and maybe it's the subtitles not getting the nuances right. I mean, I did find 2 separate spelling inconsistencies in both of the episodes I've covered so far today. But for example, why did the ancient people program King Pyramidder to return 600 million years later in anticipation of the return of the machines, Why would they think the machines would return? For that matter, how could it possibly take Bakusun's 600 million years to prep his plans for revenge? I'm not saying I know what I'm talking about, but this feels to me like a post hoc justification to tie all these disparate elements together. I don't buy that the machines were originally intended to be from Earth. If I'm wrong, please educate me, but honestly, even if I'm right, I don't care. Even if it's sloppy, I'm just happy this show is finally about something. It's finally saying something beyond, it's an old civilization we got our powers from. I mean, there are Moa heads and sphinxes and pyramids. That's old stuff. What more do you need? There's actually a mythology now. There's a history. There are characters and motivations. I'll take it. So even if Power Rangers has the upper hand when it comes to mystery, this kind of information is so overdue for Ohranger that I have little problem with Miura info dumping, even if it is halfway through the series. Both episodes are really about the chase. The Power Rangers set up 90s laptops to track the pyramid's signal. Riki gets to explore the modern era in some occasionally creepy ways. The two teams even split up in the same configurations, which sounds like it would make it easy to use the same fight footage. However, because one team has Riki with them and the other team has Doreen, there's very little they can actually use. It got to the point where they were using so little Ohranger footage I was wondering why they bothered cutting away to it at all. The American fights match the Japanese footage pretty well though. When the final fight starts though, Power Rangers can use a little bit more, although still cutting around Riki and Doreen. They also have to cut around the new bad guy, Karis, but we'll get to her later. And then there's this one shot from Ohranger that Power Rangers mirrors in order to match the configuration of their own close-up shot. But the premise is largely the same. The new hero defeats all the bad guys to save either the Power Rangers or Doreen, depending on the episode. Then the monster grows, at which point the main five take over. They can't win, so the new guy brings in his pyramid to finish things off. After that, the main difference is that in Power Rangers, the Gold Ranger disappears, but in Ohranger, King Ranger and Paku are captured, and the episode continues. Let's score them, although this is quite a bit tougher than the last pair. Something I didn't mention about Power Rangers is how it uses tone and structure in a way that I usually praise the Sentai for. It breaks away from the usual formula to let you know this is special. There are no school projects, no volunteer works, no juice bar. Bulk and Skull don't even appear. It opens in the middle of a conflict, with the Machine Empire splitting up the Power Rangers to get the drop on them. And that dovetails into the actual plot when the mysterious pyramid shows up to save them. It's a very focused episode, just like Ohranger is. Ohranger obviously has a lot more going for it in the exposition department, but I think they come out pretty even in overall storytelling, so I'll give it a tie. For characters, Power Rangers suffers a bit. Since the Gold Ranger is presented as a mystery rather than a character, the only character who gets anything of substance is Billy with his occasional mopiness. And sadly, as we all know, that's more of a red herring than an actual arc. Riki and Doreen are interesting new characters with a solid bond to each other. Each shares a youthful optimism, even if Riki is tempered by suspicion, and 70% of Doreen's lines are just, Riki!
Riki, 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 Riki,
Ultimately, I still have to give it to Ohranger. Finally, for action, while Power Rangers does an almost seamless job at substituting, they still lose some cool stuff, like Riki getting the jump on Gordo and Shohei. And I love seeing a rare nighttime fight scene when Riki explores the carnival. I'm not sure what drugs the director was on when he decided on melting clowns, but it's still pretty cool. Ohranger wins this category and the overall victory, although both shows are pretty good. The result is closer than it looks. Obviously, since Power Rangers Zeo does not adapt this, Ohranger wins story, characters, and action by default. Good job, Ohranger! It was a hard-fought victory, but you managed to squeak by. Zeo is more about comparisons than straight-up reviews, but this is too important to the series to ignore completely. Frankly, this story is weird. It should have been a two-parter because it feels rushed as a part and a half. Riki is kidnapped, and then a monster that vaguely resembles him, Bara King, starts kidnapping girls. The Ohrangers immediately assume this monster is Riki, despite how far-fetched it is. Then the show immediately dissolves all the tension by revealing it's not actually Riki, and he and Paku are left to wander around Purgatory for a while. Who sets all this into motion? It's Karis, the zookeeper at Baranoia's Plant and Animal Reserve, which is a thing they have now, why not? Bacchus Hund puts her in charge of everything as soon as King Pyramidder first appears, and I don't really get it. Karis is weird. I find her compelling as a concept, but that concept never goes anywhere. I thought they were doing something similar to Lami in Ohranger, adding a woman villain right as the 6th hero shows up. But Lami's a mainstay for the rest of the series, while Karis dies at the end of this quasi-3-parter and is never referenced again. So why does Baranoia have a zoo? What makes Karis such a trusted aide to Baranoia? I was going to ask why Baranoia keeps a human in their employ when they hate humans, but it's revealed she's actually a monster. So why does she generally stay in her human form if Baranoia hates humans? Just as a twist for us? Riki seems to know her, so what's their story? It's a lot of intrigue and importance to put on a character who is ultimately pretty meaningless. I found this incredibly disappointing. I think this is all for the cameo factor. Probably because Ohranger is the 20th Super Sentai series, they've been including a lot of actors from previous series. As I pointed out, Miura is one of the original heroes from Go-Ranger. I haven't had a chance to point it out, but as soon as I heard Bacchus Hund, I recognized his voice as that of Ohranger's narrator. And Karis returns from Die Ranger, where her actress played Gara, one of the main Gorma villains. Sadly, that ends up being the most interesting thing about her. I get that the story doesn't line up well with the Gold Ranger mystery, but I'm surprised Power Rangers Zeo didn't adapt this footage in some way, given that it's a rare 2-on-2 giant monster fight, which is pretty cool. Bara King eventually gets adapted near the end of Power Rangers Zeo, but without using this or any Sentai footage. I'm guessing their squeamishness comes from how curvy Karis' monster form is. The camera framing really wants you to know she has massive hips and massive boobs. Maybe that's just too saucy for Power Rangers. Oh well, given how underdeveloped the character is, maybe Power Rangers had the right idea skipping all of this. I need to wrap this up. I've already been here way too long and somehow managed to cover 6 episodes instead of my usual 4. I hope it was worth it. Think of it as a value pack. And if you value what I do here, please let the almighty algorithm know by liking this video and commenting on it. Please subscribe and do the bell thing so you can see more of my videos, which I put out every other Monday. I have over 400 of them now. And if you're financially able, please go to patreon.com/MystAirFusion to help support the channel. I will see you next time.